Hello everybody. So if you've been following the channel, you know that I don't own bonds, not a single one. I think of my Bitcoin allocation as what would have been my bond allocation if it were not for Bitcoin. And thus, in this bucket, which is about a third of my portfolio, I have pure form Bitcoin. And more recently, given the high rise in price of MicroStrategy shares, more recently I've had a greater portion of MicroStrategy, and I've been becoming more and more bullish on MicroStrategy. And MicroStrategy, actually, my most viewed video on this channel was on MicroStrategy, believe it or not, almost 9,000 views. And so this video is just telling you that I bought some more today at $13.40 a share. I bought some more MicroStrategy because the market in general, the risk assets in general, are having some weakness again, right? We saw the NVIDIA shares go down today, but that, you know, that's not the only asset that's going down. Bitcoin certainly is going down, and it seems like we're going through a repeat of May 1st, of the drop we had on May 1st. We're trading at about 59,000 right now. Again, that is to be expected. Summer is usually a slow season for assets such as riskier assets like Bitcoin or like the NASDAQ, for example. And so very fewer Bitcoins exchange hands in the summer. You know, people are out, they're on vacation, they're not home. That's the whole sell in May and go away expression. I wouldn't be surprised if we trade sideways for many more months, which is why I think at $13.40 a share for me, that's a good price to have. Quick reminder of why I care about MicroStrategy and Bitcoin and why I talk about it. You know, I make a point on this channel to try to cover only the best assets, only the highest assets, the assets with the bigger potential. And if I look at MicroStrategy, really the comparison for them is NVIDIA. If you compare it to NVIDIA over the past 4 years, why do I use April 2020, by the way, here? I use that because that's when they adopted the Bitcoin strategy, right? MicroStrategy was a very different company before that. Ever since they adopted their Bitcoin strategy, MicroStrategy yielded 83, almost 84% annual return over 4 years, and NVIDIA 100%. So I compare this company to really the top stocks out there in the market. But if you go further back and you just look at Bitcoin, you can see that Bitcoin has trailed the best asset in the past 10 years, which was NVIDIA. Bitcoin has just trailed it at 66%. And keep in mind that is without a multiplier. Ask yourself, what would have MicroStrategy done given that it has a multiplier, which is the point of this video, to kind of go back over this once more. So recently, before I go back to the calculation on the multiple and the multiplier, recently MicroStrategy bought more Bitcoin. They bought 12,000 Bitcoin. Once again, kind of at the small peak or the peak of the week, they paid something like $66,000 a Bitcoin. So I guess they bought a little high compared to now, but really not as high as the 74 that it traded at about 2 months ago. Anyways, they bought 226,000 Bitcoin at 59,200. That's 13.4 billion worth of Bitcoin. Their current market cap is 24 billion. So that means that their multiple is 1.75. They are trading at 1.75 times the liquidation value of their Bitcoin. And it's important to note that this ratio is cheaper compared to the first time I really covered the stock in depth of the channel, which was in late March when I asked the same question as this video, right? Is the stock overvalued? Is MicroStrategy overvalued? Back in that video, it was trading at a 2x. Now it's trading at 1.75x. So it got cheaper relatively, and it owns more Bitcoin now. So one of the key questions of investing in MicroStrategy is, should it trade higher than 1x Bitcoin holdings? I think anybody who's honest about an asset like a MicroStrategy or any company owning very sellable assets thinks these assets should be trading at least at 1 time Bitcoin holdings, right? You shouldn't have a Bitcoin. You shouldn't have a discount. You should be trading at least at 1 times. But should they be trading more? Should they be trading at, say, 2x holdings? And yes, in my view, they should. And why should they? Why would people want to buy MicroStrategy and grant them that premium? Well, first of all, you still have plenty of countries that can't access the Bitcoin ETFs. You have many institutions that can't own pure Bitcoin. And MicroStrategy allows you to do things that you can't do right now with the ETFs or with the Bitcoin itself, like borrowing on margin or playing with options around a stock that is highly correlated to Bitcoin. So MicroStrategy has a clear role to play in the ecosystem of Bitcoin ownership. And also, why should we have a multiplier, right? Why should the stock be trading at a multiplier of how many Bitcoin holdings they have? Well, but banks do. Banks already do that, right? JP Morgan, for example, trades at 1.84, the book value, the liquidation value, the value of what they own, their melting ice cube, their fiat, their debt, their bonds, what they own at JP Morgan is trading at 1.84 times, because the market is seeing that with that cash, the company is going to be able to earn outsized returns in the future. And, you know, I'm assuming personally that it's going to be the same thing for MicroStrategy. This will be the last slide of this video, which I've covered many times before. But I'm assuming MicroStrategy will also be able to earn money on its Bitcoin bag, on its major Bitcoin holding. So to me, a highly appreciating asset like Bitcoin held on a balance sheet, in my view, it makes sense if it were to get a 2x multiple, the stock trading at a 2x time how many Bitcoin it has. And if you have a 2x multiple, if a stock is trading at 2 times the Bitcoin value, what that means is that if Bitcoin goes up 100%, then MicroStrategy would go up by twice as much because of a multiplier effect. So the market is still trying to figure out what the right multiple is for a stock like MicroStrategy. And, you know, that's where some of the risk comes and some of the volatility comes, because actually the price over Bitcoin, that might be lower than 1.75. Who knows? We don't really know. It's a new form of company. It will be interesting as more companies adopt a Bitcoin strategy. It will be interesting to see what multiple the market grants. But in my view, at 1.75, we have greater odds of a multiple expansion than we have odds of a multiple compression, which is why, again, I bought the stock today in the 1300s. I bought the stock today. So one more thing that I want to say about MicroStrategy is that a more simple way to say it is in my view, we're kind of forcing the world to buy Bitcoin for index funds. We're kind of pushing the world to buy Bitcoin, because MicroStrategy, although they own Bitcoin, they also made their way into plenty of index funds. And the whole point is, will they one day want to join the S&P 500? Well, if they do, well, guess what? The whole world will be forced to buy Bitcoin through the magic or stupidity, depending on how you see it, of ETFs, right? And you know, on this channel, I really don't like ETFs. ETFs is blind buying of assets without really a strong belief of the asset. But so what do they do? Well, they're able to use those capital markets to buy Bitcoin. So what do? They use leverage, typically in the form of convertible debt. And by convertible debt, we know that at a future date, they will either refinance it and pay it off, or they will convert it to shares. And of course, historically, MicroStrategy has been converting those convertible notes to shares, right? But we know the debt issued will at some point in the future either be paid off, refinanced, rolled over, or turned into shares. So at the end of the day, it's the same thing. You're buying more Bitcoin with dilution in the market, dilution of your stock. So what do they do? Well, the minor part of their investment in Bitcoin comes from their own cash that they had back in the 2020s, and their operating business, their MicroStrategy, the operating business, the business intelligence business, that creates a little bit of cash. But that's a minor way that they buy Bitcoin. The main way they buy Bitcoin is through both debt issuance and equity issuance, and both of them kind of go hand in hand, because they oftentimes just exercise these convertibles and turn it into equity and issue equity for them. So one of the chief advantages of doing that is that this is not mark-to-market debt. This is very long-term debt, and thus it's debt that is suited for the high volatility of Bitcoin. You know, the asset can be up 20%, down 20% a month. You're not going to get liquidated if you're MicroStrategy, typically, right? Hopefully, unless you have a very, very long drawdown, you're not going to get liquidated. Why? Because you can see some of your debt, for example, is due in June 2028, over in February 2027. So it's very, very long-term debt. That's when you owe it, and depending on the stock price, depending on whether the stock price is overvalued relative to the Bitcoin holdings or not, then MicroStrategy may decide to just pay it off in cash or just issue equity. And my guess is that over time they will find it very advantageous to keep issuing equity in order to turn these convertible notes into straight equity, and they do that all the time. So they become a Bitcoin development company, as they call them, or a Bitcoin financing company, and you can see they actually just redeemed some of their 650 million convertible notes and settled all conversion requests in shares, i.e. they issued more shares for those notes, but they also do straight equity offerings from time to time. And you can go back in the investor relations website and look at all of their ways that they have to just raise capital from the market and put it straight into Bitcoin. And more capital will come because this company, now a $23 billion company, a few months back, almost a $30 billion company, this company is becoming eligible to some really serious index funds. And so recently, right, last month, MicroStrategy entered the MSTR World, which is the world index fund, right, the total stock world index fund, and they entered that index fund. So that means that now the flow of people investing in their retirement account in every single stock also own some MicroStrategy, and you can see they own some quite. They are in some quite interesting ETFs, right? Including the S&P 1500, which is small cap, mid cap, and large cap. But the big question, right? The big advantage which this stock could get to is the S&P 500 if the price of Bitcoin keeps going up. If that multiple remains the same or sees some expansion, we are looking at a company that could become eligible for inclusion in the S&P 500, in which case the leverage could get even crazier and you could force yourself to the top. You could force the market to buy you. That is the MicroStrategy playbook in a nutshell that was started by other companies like Semler or recently, for example, a small cap did that, and maybe a lot more companies will do that in the future. Let me conclude with a slide that I've already read in my prior presentations, but this is important to understand why Michael Saylor calls MicroStrategy a Bitcoin development company. Bitcoin development company, we owe this to his analogy of Bitcoin being the granite under Manhattan. If the financial system of the future is built on a layer of value called Bitcoin, who's going to be building that system, that new financial system? Who's going to be the JP Morgan, quote unquote, of the post-fiat world? Well, it could be Michael Saylor. And this is where I believe the market is also pricing in some present value of future value some present value of future cash flows for Bitcoin, which is they may be able to earn some rent on the more than 1% of all of the Bitcoin that they own. They may be able to earn some money on that Bitcoin. That's a big opportunity that is not yet clear, but that will likely manifest itself. And one of the chief ways you can do that is who knows what layer 2 is going to be the thing. You know, Lightning doesn't seem to be doing as well as it was, say, a year and a half ago. We'll have to see if it's a Bitcoin wrapped on other assets, or if it's wrapped simply in Web 2.0 software, that type of wrapping. But clearly people are going to own Bitcoin in one form or another. And if it's not pure form, someone's earning a yield, right? If you buy an ETF, Fidelity or BlackRock, they're earning a yield. You're earning that percentage fee. Clearly, MicroStrategy at some point, in my view, will be able to earn a yield for custodying Bitcoin, and that yield could amount to some really nice amounts of money for that stock. You can lend it eventually. Of course, this is not something that is being discussed right now, but you can eventually lend it, right? You can use it as collateral. You can use it for options. You can use it to fund projects, and only the finest projects, of course, in a Bitcoin standard would get funded. Essentially, all of the derivatives of a traditional bank that you have today, you could potentially do with a Bitcoin held by MicroStrategy, but given the fact that this is a finite asset, this is a finite supply asset, the standards of this lending would be so much more stringent, right? Such that it would be very, very hard to lend. And when you lend it, you better have the best warranties, the best collateral, and the best guarantees that the loans will pay back. And the risk will be the actual real risk of loaning money, i.e. the interest rates will be much more expensive. There is a present value of the future Bitcoin yield that is not priced in MicroStrategy, in my view. And that is why the multiple at 1.75 today may actually be higher in the future for MicroStrategy if you can really turn over that Bitcoin and really find a way to monetize it. And I think that's the way we're going, as Michael Saylor calls it, a Bitcoin development company now. So anyways, this was not investment advice, no financial advice. This is just entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe. Have a wonderful day.